Hello.
Yes, recording in progress. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is WordPress New York City Meetup. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have a guest from Kinsta. Our speaker is Marcel Bootsman. Marcel is the Business Development Manager, Dutch and DACH markets at Kinsta. Okay. He's been active in the WordPress community since 2010, and he ran his own WordPress agency until 2020. He's been a WordCamp organizer, forum moderator, and translation editor. When he's not looking at a screen, he enjoys walking, working out in the gym, at least one of us does, riding a bike, and playing tennis. I'm Winstina Hughes. I'm one of the New York City Meetup organizers. I'm really excited to have Marcel with us today. We've been working on this for a bit, just coordinating. It's really late for him in the Netherlands, and so thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your introduction, Winstina. I'm very happy to be here. Normal Mondays, I'd be in bed right now because it's 1 a.m., 1:05 to be precise. But I'm very happy to join you here to give a presentation about WordPress and static site generators and static site hosting and all those things. So, yeah, very happy to be here.
Wonderful. I'm particularly interested in static sites as a whole, just knowing that there's such a huge number that you can host. I mean, that grabbed my interest, especially because of the series that I have going on. You and I talked about it, the Woo SaaS comparison series. Before you jump into your presentation, could I ask each person just to introduce themselves, your name, and like one sentence, what brought you to today's meetup? And then we'll go through our entire group, and then Marcel will start his presentation.
Hi, my name's Karen Green, and I am actually in Florida. This is the first time I'm coming to one of the New York City meetups. I am a co-organizer of the West Orlando WordPress group, and I always love to go to other WordPress meetups and learn new things and meet new people. This is a subject I know nothing about, and I look forward to learning.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Okay. Chad, Jean.
Sure. Yeah, I am Chad Lawan. I used to live in New York City. I'm a full-time freelance WordPress designer, and I gave a presentation on Yoast at the WordCamp 2019.
Excellent.
Cool.
Okay. Excellent, Chad. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 more. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next if no one's gonna go. I'm in New Jersey. I've been in WordPress just for a couple of years, and I was mostly with static sites. So I thought this meetup kind of would talk about static and WordPress, because I've kind of combined them on my own, but it'd be interesting to know how experts do it. That's why I'm here. Thanks.
Excellent. I'm excited that we have someone who works with us. So that's makes me happy. It's okay. You don't have to put your camera on. I understand.
I'm Lori. I'm in Washington, D.C., and I just started getting back into WordPress like in the last month. So I'm looking forward to learning about how to use WordPress and WooCommerce with the static site generator.
Awesome. Okay. All right. We have folks here who are interested in static site. That's great. We have 2 more. It's okay if you don't want to introduce yourselves. No
Yeah,
pressure.
Eric did his introduction in the chat because his camera and mic don't work.
Okay. All right. So let's jump in. Eric, thanks for sharing that with us. And all right, I'm glad that we've all had a chance to introduce ourselves. It's good to know that we have 2 attendees here who have an interest in this specifically. So if you have more in-depth questions, don't hesitate to ask it. And if you're a beginner and you want to put your questions in chat, you could do that, or you can ask as well. Feel comfortable. I don't want you to feel that you can't share your thoughts or ask any questions. All right, so we'll jump into the presentation.
All right, excellent. No, every question is welcome. You know, it's when I gave this presentation on WordCamp Vienna in Austria, and I basically said the same thing there. You know, if you have a question, if you don't understand what I'm saying, just raise your hand and ask, because you know, I sometimes use terms or features or techniques that I know very well, but others don't. And I do not exactly know how many things you do know. So if you don't, raise your hand or post something in the chat. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Where is it? I believe it's this one. Yeah. There we are. There we are. All right. So Winston already did a short introduction about myself. So I won't go into more details there. There's just one thing I wanted to clarify. You, Winstina, you had some trouble with the DACH. It's like it's a term which is pronounced as DACH. And I know you all there don't have a, so I won't tease you with that. It stands for Deutschland, Austria, and Switzerland. So part of my job responsibility is develop business also in these German-speaking countries.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. So today I want to talk about, well, the advantages of using WordPress together with a static site generator, and I've called them absolute heroes. Of course, there are other heroes in this world, but for this subject, you know, these two can really strengthen each other. And let's dive into that. So today, what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about what static sites are. Some of you might already know, but some won't. So I will explain that. And of course, this meeting is going to be recorded. So any other people that are going to watch this afterwards will have an explanation about that. I'm going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages there are, because, yeah, when you have advantages, most of the times you also have disadvantages. And in an ideal case, the advantages way more than the disadvantages. I'm going to talk a little bit about the ideal candidates and how WordPress can help you generate a static site. There are a few plugins out there that can help you do this, and I will tell you what plugins there are and which one I used to make a test case of this. And I'm going to also talk to you about how you can host your static site and basically come up with a conclusion. Right, so let's dive into the world of static sites. Hold on to your chairs. So what are static sites? Well, a static site is basically a collection of static files. Yeah, but what does that tell us? Well, static files are files that do not need processing on the server. So when you talk about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, these are mainly text files, and images and other things that don't need processing, but they only need to be sent to the browser of the one that is visiting your website. So no processing is needed on the server. There's no database involved, and all of the visitors get the same files delivered. So you cannot log in, or you cannot have a personal profile on the page. You cannot have personalized stuff on there because, you know, it's static and everybody gets the same files. So that's a short introduction about what a static site is. You know, back in the days, like in the 1900s, which is a long time ago, the only thing that existed was static sites. I don't know if anyone has seen this, but you know, when Front Page from Microsoft, like this old software package where you could generate a website and add some content, you know, it was way from ideal. But you know, that process, or that actually delivered a static site. It was a bunch of HTML files. CSS didn't exist back then. JavaScript didn't exist back then either. It was just HTML, some images, and that was it. That was your website. We've grown from the phase of front page, of course. Now we have WordPress and a lot of more possibilities, of course. So the next thing I want to talk about is how can you build a static website when using a CMS. And in this presentation, I'm going to focus on WordPress, but there are more CMSs out there. A lot of open source CMSs, also closed source CMSs, and some of these can generate a static site. For WordPress, you need a plugin, and other CMSs basically already have the static site generation built in. For instance, Statamic, there's an extension for that. But if you use Hugo, that's basically just if you press generate, it creates a website for you which consists of all static files. So the thing that you need to do is, or the things that you need to do is, you need to build your site. You need to put everything together, the look and feel, the colors, the styling, etc. You need to add your content. And when that's done, you deploy your site. And for those of you that don't know what the term deploy means, deploying basically means moving the files from a development environment, whether that's local or on a server, to a live environment where it's hooked up to a domain name and people can access your site from the World Wide Web. I haven't used that term a lot with the World Wide Web. That sounds like an old term. So as you see in the image on this slide, you have multiple environments on the left: the development, staging, and test environment. That would be the place where you build your site and you test it. And the live environment would be the environment where your website is actually accessible. And the little black line between staging and live, that's the deployment part, moving it from the test environments to a live environment. So let's dive into the advantages of static sites. Static sites are easier to optimize for performance compared to non-static websites, because static websites have fewer moving parts, so to speak. They are easier to optimize for performance, and static websites are generally very lean and quick to load, because it's just text or some images and those kind of things that needs to be loaded in the browser. Of course, you can build a static website that uses a lot of JavaScript and uses a lot of processing in the browser. That would be something that needs to be optimized. So there would be a lot of challenges there to make sure that is optimized to the best level possible. But in general cases, it's very easy to optimize. Another advantage of a static website is that it uses less server resources. Because static websites, they don't require any server-side processing. So the server needs to do a lot less work for each visit. This improves performance, and it helps your website perform better under scale. So if your website is going to get a lot of traffic, if you have a standard WordPress website, there's a lot of processing going on. Not talking about cache or whatever, there's a lot of things to optimize on a WordPress site, of course. But if you have a standard WordPress site and it's going to get a lot of load, there's a lot of processing happening in the backend and the database. So in a static website, you don't have that. On the other hand, if you use less server resources, you can also save cost on hosting, or even for free, which we do at Kinsta. And if you do not really use the server for processing, but just for sending files, that doesn't take the server a lot of processor time. It's very easy to transfer some files instead of first going to a database, getting the content from the database, putting that into the PHP templates from WordPress, and then generating the HTML that needs to be sent to the browser. There's a lot of more processing going on there. So you can easily save hosting costs if you want to do that. A static website is easier to secure because it doesn't allow, or there is no possibility to enter a static website like we do in WordPress. Sorry. In WordPress, you can log in, and there are plenty of possibility to try to hack a WordPress site, whether it's from an old plugin or a leak in WordPress core or whatever. A static website just doesn't have that. It only has static files, and you cannot log in or, well, in any other way interact with the server. You basically only say, or your browser says, I want this file. The server receives that request and sends you the file, and that's it. So it is possible for a static website to be hacked, but that would require a lot of knowledge about the server. But the website itself is not like the entry point for hackers. They should do a lot more effort to try to hack the server where a static site is hosted. Another advantage that we see is that it's very easy to launch simple website. You can launch static websites very quickly because you don't need to worry about setting up technical details. For instance, a database, how many processors do you need? What's the amount of memory you need? And those kind of things. So it's very easy to just launch a new static website and don't even think about system requirements because there are none. Well, storage, that's one, of course, but that's the only thing. The last advantage on this slide, there are probably more, but these are the most important that I think, is higher reliability, because static websites are less prone to errors or downtime caused by server issues or database failures, since they don't rely on server-side processing. This can make them a more, well, reliable option for critical websites or applications where uptime is essential. And of course, there are platforms out there that provide you with uptime guarantees or service level agreements. But if you look at a static site, it's just very easy, and there are not a lot of hard requirements for hosting a static site. All right. Let me see if I have the chat window here to see if there are questions coming in. No, not yet. Okay. Let me move the toolbar here because that was on my other monitor again. All right. The next slide, we are going to talk about the disadvantages of static sites. And there are a few, and if you paid attention, there are less disadvantages than advantages, so we're doing well. If you have a static website, like let's just say we have a simple portfolio website that shows a couple of pages with services a certain company is offering. When you want to change the content, you would have to find the file that has that, update the content, send it to the server somehow. And if you're using a CMS, you can, like WordPress, you can easily find the content, you edit the content, you publish it, and then it's live. But when you have a static website, that content needs to be deployed. So you need to have a process in place that makes sure that every time you update content in your CMS, whether that's online or offline, and as soon as you publish that, a process needs to be going in the background that does the deployment. And I will dive a little bit deeper into that in one of my following slides. But that could be a disadvantage, that you have a little bit more complexity. If you want to add features also, you might need more technical knowledge, because some features are just not available in a static website. If you look at an e-commerce solution, that's going to be very difficult to do. If you look at simple forms, of course you can circumvent that by using JavaScript or using externally loaded forms, which then send the submitted form to a third party where it's processed, and you either get an email or it's put somewhere in another tool you use. So that could be a disadvantage too. Depending on the CMS you use, there might be limited functionality in there, you know, and I've added there within parentheses, not with WordPress, because we all know WordPress. We all know what's possible with WordPress, and that's basically everything, because there's a plugin for everything in WordPress. So if you are using another CMS, which is not WordPress, it might be difficult to find certain solutions for a required functionality of your website. And as I stated before, you know, you might need third parties to add certain functionality or features to your website. And I already said that, you know, it's the forms, it's e-commerce, and there might be other things, you know, if you want to have a forum or whatever, that can happen. I heard the sound somewhere. I don't see a chat message. I don't know what that was. Did somebody raise their hand or something?
No.
No. Okay, then I will just continue. So these are a few of the disadvantages that static sites might have. So what sites are best used as static websites? You know, what kind of websites could be ideal candidates to be deployed as a static site?
Marcel, your slides still on advantages.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not here. Oh, screen sharing is paused. Why is that? Why is my screen sharing paused? Oh, here, resume share. I pressed the pause button. Excuse
Okay.
me.
Thank you, Chad.
Yeah, thanks for letting me know, Chad, letting us know. So the ideal candidates. When I gave this presentation in Vienna, you know, that it was very easy. There was an audience, and I asked the question, okay, what do you guys think what the ideal candidates were? And there were a lot of people that reacted. It's a bit difficult here, so I will just continue and put the bullets on screen. What kind of websites are the most ideal candidates for a static website? As I already mentioned before, you know, portfolio websites, it's pretty straightforward. You know, it's just a basic website with some static information about services or products, which is on the website, and there's no further interaction needed with the pages on that website. And another one is like a basic business brochure website. It, you know, contains some images, maybe some videos that are loaded from another place or from YouTube, but that's basically it. A resume website, if you have a personal website which just has your resume, you could build that in WordPress or in another CMS, but that would be, well, overkill, if I would say so. You know, you can do that more easily and more sustainable. Also, you know, we have a lot of discussions about environment and power usage and those kind of things. So if we can limit the amount of, well, servers that's needed for hosting our websites, you know, having a static website is one step in the right direction, because you just need less power to power a static website. If you have a simple blog also, you know, if you publish a few articles per week or per month, I don't know, you could use a static website. If you don't accept comments on your website, you could easily write your blogs in WordPress, use a nice plugin, publish your posts, press the deploy button, and then it's being deployed, and there it is. It's just for, it's a read-only website, and people can just see that. Other ones are documentation or knowledge base websites, because basically what that does is the same thing as all the bullet points above, is just show the visitors information. No interaction is needed, no personalization, and those kind of things. And of course, landing pages are of the same category here. It's just easy to build landing pages in a CMS, and if you want to use WordPress or the blog editor, You can build a landing page with all the block patterns we have these days, and you can just press deploy and it's being built as a static website. So how can WordPress help with your static website? Well, as I said before, WordPress has a lot of plugins available, and these plugins can be of help if you have challenges with your WordPress website. WordPress is powered, or sorry, 43% of all websites on the internet are powered by WordPress. So it's a big number. And with almost 60K plugins available in the WordPress.org repository and 12,000 themes available, you know, it's very easy to find a solution based on all these open source solutions that we have available. You can take all these building blocks and use the block editor, to use the word block again, to build your website. And it gives you all the flexibility you have and all the freedom you want to build your WordPress site, or have your WordPress site built by an agency, for instance, with all these well, ready to market solutions that we have in the WordPress.org repository. And you know, being in the community for such a long time, it's so great to see that still new plugins are being invented for stuff that we want to do within WordPress. Yeah, it's very cool to see what kind of solutions have been thought about to using plugins or themes to have a website. So if you want to combine WordPress and a static site, you can use a plugin. And there are multiple plugins that can be used to do this. I used a copy of Simply Static Pro. I contacted the author of the plugin, the company that is behind this, and ask, okay, can you give me a license so I can make a presentation and test your plugin and how it works? And they were happy to share it with me. There are other plugins out there, which is static, but then with double A. There's WP2 static with the number 2 in between. And you have Gatsby and you have Astro, which are like also tools that can help you generate a static website from WordPress. And
could I ask you to delve into doing that?
Sorry?
What are like the top 2 benefits that you'd see doing this?
For using WordPress as your CMS to generate a static site, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as I'm talking to a WordPress audience, we are all familiar with how WordPress works. And as I said in the beginning of the presentation, you can use all kinds of CMSs that are out there, but you know, you have a learning curve there. And if you are used to working with WordPress and you want to test generating a static website, or you have a customer that said, I heard something about a static website, I'm using WordPress right now, can you help me? Then this is a solution that can help you or your client, or both even, to get to the end result being a static website that is based on WordPress content.
Got it.
All right, thanks for your question. All right, so what can Simply Static Pro do for you? It can do a lot, as you see on all the bullet points that are here, and I'm going to go through them shortly. If you want to deploy your website, there are multiple ways of doing that. You can grab all the files, use SFTP to send the files to the server, export your database, import it on the server, etc. When you want to deploy a static website, you basically just need to transfer the files. And if you have some kind of solution you use, that solution is probably in the methods that are possible with Simply Static Pro. you could easily, you can download a zip file from within WordPress that contains your whole static website. And then you can put it somewhere where that can be hosted at your hosting company or even on your own private server or whatever. You can send the deployment to GitHub. So you also have versioning, and you could also use GitHub pages or Cloudflare pages or Netlify or, well, Kinsta also, of course, to do the hosting. And you could use SFTP from within the plugin. So there's numerous ways of doing the deployment from within the plugin. So you only need to put in the credentials or the license keys, or the keys from other services that you want to deploy your website. Simply Static Pro also has support for multi-site. So if you decide to move your WordPress multi-site to a static website or static websites, because it's a multi-site, that's a possibility too with this plugin.
Could I ask you to share a little bit about WP CLI support? That's something I think not too many folks are familiar with. And so
yeah, sure.
I'd be
Yeah,
curious now.
when I get to that bullet point, I will explain a little bit more about that. Yes, I will.
Awesome.
There are a few, the next 3 bullet points are the integration bullet points, for form integration, search, and comments integration. As you might all be aware, is that these three functionalities, they need interaction with the server. Search can be done in a different way. You can use some JavaScript solutions that are out there to be able to search a static website from within your browser. If you need form or comments integration, you could basically use Gravity Forms or Contact Form 7, and you need some configuration done within WordPress, so you can generate a static website that fully supports these 2 form plugins. If you want to have search integration, you could use for basic, for instance, you can use Fuge.js or Algolia is also an external tool that you can use. You need an account for that to be able to use it. And comments, there are some solutions out there that can do comments outside of WordPress, and those can also be used in a static site. Multilingual support is also possible with Simply Static Pro. And now we come to the bullet point about WP CLI. WP CLI stands for Command Line Interface, and WP stands for WordPress, of course. And this enables developers or people that like to use the command line to interact with WordPress for all kinds of solutions. You can delete spam messages, you can generate pages, you can delete pages, you can do a lot of stuff. And there's a very good documentation about WP CLI. It's a separate project within the make.wordpress.org site. There's a dedicated team working on WP CLI, and you can use that. And WP CLI support for Simply Static Pro means that you can log on to your server and you can basically type the command to generate or deploy your static site. And a big advantage of WCLI is that it also supports batch jobs. So you can create a text file which contains all the commands you want to do for WP CLI, generate the new site, deploy it, maybe do some optimization that you can all do in the script. And you can call that after you publish a post, for instance. Does that answer your question?
It does. Alan presents a lot on that. And so I was curious how the 2 integrate together.
Yeah, I haven't tested this, but what I've seen in the documentation is that it is well supported. I know Alain very good, and he's doing a great job with the WP CLI project. So this should be a real nice way to generate your static website from the command line. Simply Static Pro also enables you to optimize and minify all the content and all the files that are being generated, so you get the most optimized files to be deployed to your server.
With multilingual support, Weglot is that's a plugin and service that I use for support, inclusion, and tech. Are there, like, what are your thoughts on integrating like multilingual into that process? I mean, I think there's huge value in discussing it because I'm US bound.
Yeah.
Clearly you're presenting from Europe, and so like there's just a breadth of languages within our space. And so like, what are your thoughts on plugins and how to support other speakers using?
Yeah, I think if you look at multilingual support, there have been discussions that it should be within WordPress itself, as in WordPress core, but it's still plugin territory, as Matt Mullenweg said. And there are a lot of good plugins out there that help you create a multilingual website. You have Weglot. There is Multilingual Press, which is basically built on a WordPress multi-site where every language has its own multi-site subsite, which you can then link together to be able to switch to different languages. If you put this into perspective when using, or when you want to end up with a static site, I think you don't want to make it overly complicated.
Okay.
And multilingual support, it's good that it's there, but I don't know if a multilingual website, if you have 2 languages, it might be okay. But if you have a lot more languages, it might add a lot of complexity to the site. And it can still work, but my preferences for static websites are the real simple websites with just some content that needs to be read-only. And if you have a CMS that supports multilingual stuff, it might get a little bit too complicated to build a good static website from that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the other one, the last bullet point here is optimization and minification, and I already talked to you about that. That's Simply Static Pro does that out of the box. So on the next slide, I don't know if it's really visible on the screen, but this is a screenshot of how static or Simply Static Pro looks like in your WordPress admin. You can add all kinds of deployment settings here. As you can see, there's GitHub. You can add your tokens there. And every time you publish something on your WordPress site, you can say, okay, deploy my website. Then it's going to be deployed to GitHub. And when it's deployed to GitHub, it's not directly visible on a website because you need to have hosting there. Then you have GitHub pages or Cloudflare pages, as I said. And also Kinsta static site hosting can hook into GitHub and like gets a notification when a new version has been committed to this repository, and then it fetches all the new files and they are then published on your website. And this is a one-time setup process. You can select if you want your website to be redeployed with the new files automatically. And then Kinsta listens to GitHub, and when GitHub says, hey, there's a new version, it's going to be deployed. And you can also choose if you want to do that manually, just to have a little bit more control over when a new version of the website is going to be deployed. So the thing that I explained right now, this is what you see in the Kinsta dashboard. If you have static site hosting set up at Kinsta, you can see that your website is over here. I'm using a screenshot from the WordCamp Vienna, sorry, from the WordCamp Vienna talk. So that's why that's there. You can see the latest deployments in the bottom, where it says, it has been published in March 26th. A new version was published on April 2nd a few times. And whenever something changes in GitHub, in the GitHub repository, this new version of the database, or sorry, of the site is being deployed on the server where it's accessible through the domain name. So this is a rather easy process for you to set up your static site and have it deployed whenever there's changes. So I already talked about some of the options there are for deploying your files, and there are a lot of free solutions out there, of which Kinsta is also a free solution. You can host up to 100 static sites with Kinsta. So if you want to play around, be our guest. If you have clients that you might think, okay, I'm running an agency, I have 100 clients, 20 of these clients have WordPress websites that might be eligible to transform into a static website, because the content rarely changes, or it's a simple website, not too complicated. This might be a good solution to think about saving money, saving processing costs, and maybe, well, earning some more money. If you want to host the websites for your clients, you can how do you say, you can increase your profit there. So the conclusion about this, and in IT, it always depends. And there are a lot of variables, and the presentation I gave here only touched on like a few points where you need to talk about and what you need to consider if you want to have a static website in combination with WordPress or not. Think about it and discuss with your team members or peers or competitors. In WordPress, a lot of agencies are competitors but talk with each other, because the WordPress community is like the overlying friend zone. So to talk about what your plans are, and if you have questions, just talk to people on meetups, or talk to people on WordCamps, or talk to people in the WordPress support forums, that you have a challenge, that you have a client that wants to do static website, but you're not sure how to do it. And then in the end, weigh the pros and the cons, and see if it's going to be a solution that works for both you and the client, to see if a static site is the solution to the problem that's you need to solve. So that basically is my presentation, and I want to thank you for your attention, and I'm very welcome to answer any questions you have. And I already see a question from Chad. I'm very intrigued. I make mostly static site. I've emailed you. Oh, sorry, that was not a question. That was just a notification. Sorry for that.
Looks like Jean asked, would you be able to put
Yes.
up the static site?
Oh yeah,
slide.
I can do that.
Yes, Eric. This you could use up to. Is the static site plugin free? You needed a license, right?
Yeah, for the static for the Simply Static Pro plugin, you need a license, but there is a free version which is limited in functionality. I'm not exactly sure what the differences are, but you can look it up in the WordPress.org plugin repository, and you can see the features there. And if you want more functionality, then you can use the licensed version. But there are some free plugins out there, and you can just find them in the plugin repository. I hope that answers your question, Jean. Sorry, Eric.
Dropping the link in there for it.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. And I have questions throughout.
Go.
I'm really good for questions. I like to ask lots of questions. But I have wanted to explore Kinsta's products more. I'm not code heavy, like a developer that works with code so much. And I think that from what I can tell, Kinsta might require that a bit more. Is there any documentation that you could kind of point us towards that would help, with deploying our first static sites? And I remember Jean and Lori, right?
Yeah, I had one question. Does Kinsta offer shared hosting for WordPress?
No, we don't do shared hosting. We only do managed WordPress hosting. So shared is something we don't do. Well, basically because we want all our websites to have the best performance and security possible. And that's why we use isolated containers. And it goes a bit far to go into details here about that. But that means that every website gets, well, an isolated container where all resources that the website needs are reserved and will not interfere with other websites within your plan or on the virtualized server.
That's what I wanted to delve into, your containers.
I had one more question.
Sure.
And does Kinsta, do the WordPress instances, can you use them as headless instances and use the WordPress REST API?
You mean in combination with static site hosting?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Definitely, that you have a WordPress installation hosted at Kinsta. You don't need to hook up a live domain. You can use a test domain for that. You can have a team of people work on that website, for instance, and add or change content. And as soon as you want a new version to be rolled out, you can deploy it to GitHub. And if you have a static site configured that listens to the GitHub repository that you have configured, then it can be easily deployed. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to post a link about in the chat also about the documentation about static site hosting, where you can read everything in detail about how we make sure your static website is performing in the best way possible, and what are the possibilities to deploy a static website.
Thank you. I
And
dropped
I'm gonna remove now the disadvantages slide, because it looks like there are only disadvantages.
Yes, please
And
do.
there are not.
Please do remove that. Yeah,
I see. Yeah, I see another question of Jean. Are the static and CMS sites under the same domain name, or do you use subdomains? It depends. Again, you could use different domains for both of them. You can use a test domain for the CMS and a live domain for static, or the other way around. It's everything's possible. Or even run it locally.
Okay. I see some possibilities with what I want to do with the Woo versus SAS comparison series, mentioning that you could do static site using that plugin, and you could also have a WooCommerce store also installed. So there's a way of combining it, even if e-commerce, installing e-commerce on the static site isn't an option. You could combine those two on a WordPress site. Like I'm getting the feeling from using that plugin.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be, I'm not sure. Would it be, I'm curious if you were to integrate the two, if you were to use that plugin, the Simply Static plugin, to have some of the pages be static site, and then which then would be deployed through Kinsta, I think. Would that be it? And then
Yeah, I'm not sure if you want to go running a static site and doing e-commerce stuff. It depends on the level of complexity also. If you look at a standard e-commerce, a standard e-commerce website, usually has some kind of stock, how many items are in stock. You need to update that as soon as something has been bought by a visitor. So when using a static website there, sure, everything can be done, everything can be coded, can be developed. If it's the ideal situation, I don't know. If you have a rather complex e-commerce website running on WooCommerce and WordPress, I would go with the best fit hosting to support that and not add another layer of complexity by having a static website trying to do e-commerce.
Okay. I mean, I like to ask questions to see what's possible. So
Yeah, but
it's possible, but it's not ideal.
that's what it is. Yes, technically, there's a lot possible technically. If it's a smart thing to do, if it's the right thing to burn your money on, I don't know, but that's what it is.
Yeah, that's really good to know.
Right.
Do we have any additional questions?
I don't see any in the chat. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Right. Then I think it's a wrap, right?
Well, I want to thank you.
You're welcome. I was very happy to be here, and yeah, happy to maybe have inspired the attendees to test out static site generation from WordPress and testing our hosting and seeing if you like it. And yeah, very curious to hear feedback.
Well, we have two thank yous, Eric and Jean both. Thank you. Eric said this is interesting. I agree. And Jean enjoyed this. I did also. So thank you for taking that time. Well into your night / early morning to share this with us.
Yes. Yes, after we finish this this talk, it's time for bed here. And yeah, as I said, I was very happy to be here, very happy to be invited, and happy to do this talk about WordPress and static site hosting. So I hope you all have a great evening, and maybe we'll meet each other on another meetup or WordCamp around the world.